thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Norfolk Select Board. As a preliminary matter, this is Kevin Calcutt, the chair of the Norfolk Select Board. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Everybody in the room can hear me, I'm sure, but Judith Lazardi, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. This open meeting of the Norfolk Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020. Due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of this meeting. With that, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Blythe, would you do us the honor of taking us through the agenda this evening?
Of course. Tonight we're starting with a public hearing regarding a poll petition for Holbrook Street, followed by COVID-19 updates and public comment. The action items tonight include naming streets in the new Waits Common at Norfolk subdivision, appointments to the Zoning Board of Appeals, approval of a one-day beer and wine license and entertainment license for Zealous Beer Company for pop-up beer and food events in April and May and June. Approval by the Cactus and Succulent Society to have a sale on Town Hill in September, to approve the use of ESSER 2 funding to reduce Norfolk's assessment for the Tri-County School District next fiscal year, to consider allowing for early in-person voting hours by the town clerk for the May 4th election, and approval of an amendment requested by Better Than Soup for a change of doing business license from craft beer cellar to just better beer. The discussion items include reviewing the DPW department budget as well as the overall town budget, to discuss the warrant for the annual town meeting, board correspondence, town administrator updates. There are 3 warrants to be approved, and there are no minutes to be approved tonight.
Thank you very much, Blythe. Our first item this evening is a public hearing for the Eversource Energy poll petition on Holbrook Street. So with that, we will open our hearing. Anita, are you able to read the notice?
I'm able, yes, sir, I can read the notice. The town's new well field on Holbrook Street requires that 2 utility poles be installed for the provision of electricity. One of the poles will be in the public right-of-way, and the
Anita?
second, yes,
You actually want to read this hearing, this notice?
that notice,
That notice.
thank
There
you.
you go.
Public hearing notice, the one that says public hearing notice, that one.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Okay, I'll go crazy and read that one. The Select Board for the Town of Norfolk will conduct a public hearing in accordance with Chapter 166, Section 22 of the Massachusetts General Laws on the petition from N-Star Electric Company, DBA Eversource Energy, for location of poles, to grant petitioners joint or identical locations for the erection or construction of poles to be owned and used in common by them, and for such other fixtures, including anchors and guys, as may be necessary to sustain or protect the wires of the line. Said poles to be located substantially as shown on the plans made by T. Tebolt dated February 25th, 2021. Filled herewith upon, along, and across the following public way or ways of said town. Holbrook Street, the southerly side, approximately 10 feet east of the Norfolk Millis town line. Install one new pole, number 26/51. Also, for permission to lay and maintain underground laterals, cables, and wires in the above or intersecting public ways for the purpose of making connections with such poles and buildings as each of said petitioners may desire for distributing purposes. Your petitioners agree to reserve space for one crossarm at a suitable point upon each side of said poles for the telephone, fire, and police signal wires owned by the town and used for municipal purposes. This hearing will be conducted on Tuesday, April 6, 2021 at 7 p.m. via Zoom online video conferencing remote access.
Thank you very much, Anita. Before we take our vote to open the hearing, Andrew, are we having any video issues right now?
I don't believe so. I have Katie watching it, and she says it's all good.
Typically, we see a picture of what the cameras see and hear.
Oh, okay. I will, we are good though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then we'll just keep trudging along then. With that, I will move that the board vote to open a public hearing to consider installation of a new utility pole on Holbrook Street to serve the Holbrook Street well field at the request of Eversource Energy. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous. Our public hearing is open. Blythe, what background do we have?
So I believe Christine Cosby from Eversource will be here, but just to give you an overview, these are the poles, both one in the public right-of-way and one on the town's property, to provide electricity to the new well field. And we have the director and the assistant director here. They can answer more questions than I can about the well if that comes up, but that's the reason for the pole location hearing.
Thank you, Blythe. I do see one individual who is calling in from a mobile number with their hand raised. Is that our guest of the hour? Take that as a no.
I think she was joining by phone, so hopefully maybe she can't hear you.
Okay. Well, I do not have the ability to unmute that phone number, so Christine, if that is you, please come off mute.
While we're waiting for that, I just will tell you that we did notify all of the abutters within 300 feet, both the ones in Norfolk of this, as well as reached out to Millis, because the pole will be on the Norfolk side of the Millis line. And so we reached out and sent notices to those residents as well, as a courtesy.
Very good. Thank you. You don't happen to recognize the phone number, Blythe?
No, sorry.
All right.
Hello?
There we go. We can hear you. Welcome.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was having trouble trying to get through. This is Christine Cosby from Eversource.
Hello, Christine. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, good. How are you guys tonight? I'm so sorry.
No worries whatsoever. We're doing well. Thank you. Would you like to talk to us a little bit about the installation of the new pole?
Yes, well, actually, the new pole is 26 over 51, and it's proposed to be located in the public way. And the purpose of the new pole would be to provide service for a new town well that's being installed out on 95 Holbrook Street.
Very good. Anything else that we should know about the project?
No, other than it's a town project, and I know that the town, from what I understand, the town's anxious to get the power out there to, energize it. And so we need to install the pole in order to do that. And then we would run an overhead service from that pole to another pole in our private property, but it happens to be town property. And that does not require petitioning. It just requires a license from the town to sign off on.
Very good. Thank you very much. Blair, Barry, anything to add?
I think she covered it well.
Good. Any questions, Anita?
No?
Cece? I have no questions on my end, so at this point, we'll open it up to anybody in attendance who has a question related to the current agenda item for the public hearing on the Eversource Energy Pole installation. If you do have a question or a comment, please use the raise hand function at this time. If you are having trouble finding the raise hand function, you can just wave at your camera and we'll call on you from there. I always get smiles, but I never get anybody who actually waves to let us know they want to talk.
It'll feel awkward.
Yeah. Well, I am not seeing any hands at this time. So with that, I would move that the board vote to close the public hearing regarding the installation of a new pole on Holbrook Street to serve the Holbrook Street well field. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The public hearing is now closed. Our next motion is that I move that the board vote to grant permission to Eversource Energy for the installation of one new pole, number 2651, on the southerly side of Holbrook Street, approximately 10 feet east of the Norfolk Millis Town line. Do I hear a second? Hearing a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. And that is a unanimous vote. Thank you so much, Christine, for joining us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and I apologize. I have a very bad reception on my end, so I just hope that you were able to hear me okay.
If that's the worst AV problem we have tonight, that's a victory.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, our next item this evening are some COVID-19 updates. Blythe?
COVID-19 updates are fairly short tonight. Our numbers continue to go up again for the third week. We were 21 new cases last week for a total of 952. All of the new cases have been in the community. There are no new cases at the prison. So the advice on the website that the Board of Health has been providing each week is to please ask residents. I know it's tough. It's gotten tiresome of wearing masks and social distancing and not gathering too much, but they strongly believe that will help make a difference, and hope that people are able to get their vaccines as soon as possible. But please be careful. We're still in the yellow zone, but we are now at about 21% positivity rate, so that's concerning. There are some more towns in the red that those numbers have creeped up. It's not us alone, but thank everyone for doing whatever they can to help us stay safe. And still waiting for guidance from the federal government about the new federal funds that are coming. We haven't seen the check yet, I don't think, and we haven't heard the details of how we can go about utilizing it. So still waiting to hear. Those are my updates.
Thank you, Blythe. Cece, any questions?
No.
Anita?
No.
We'll open it up at this time for anybody who has any questions related to our current agenda item of the COVID-19 updates. If you do have a question, please use the raise hand function at this time. Seeing no hands, so we will move on. Thank you, Blythe.
Yep.
Our next item this evening is our public comment period. This is where anybody who is in attendance has the opportunity to take the mic for just about 3 minutes to share with the board on any item that is related to the purview of the select board or the town administrator. If you would like to share this evening, we ask that you please use the raise hand function at this time, and when called upon, please state your name and address. Betsy Whitney, go right ahead, ma'am. You are on mute.
Can you hear me?
We sure can. Go right ahead.
Okay, being untechnology-ish, I have a terrible time making sure that I can do these things correctly. My name is Elizabeth Whitney, 26 Valley Street, Pondville. And I just wanted to give a 3 or 4 minute little sermonette about a group that has formed called a Public Involvement Plan, or a PIP group, under the auspices of the state of Massachusetts, as a means whereby citizens can express interest in and questions about issues that are taking place in the community. And the issue that I have been following and studying specifically is developing the old Southwood Hospital site, possibly developing it. I understand that new owners propose many significant changes to buildings and property. And number one, I am concerned about cleanup, cleanup, cleanup. When I wrote my book about the history of Pondville, I included chapter 10, which is goes into quite a bit of detail of the old Pondville Hospital, later named Southwood Hospital, that has been closed for some time. Now, what have I done? Many public reports exist at the EPA, which of course is the Environmental Protection Agency, and they do document contamination at this site resulting from prior long-term operation as a cancer hospital. In fact, reports that I have read, prepared by consultants in the past, have documented existing contamination from the prior days of much research and treatment at this hospital. And when my husband and I moved to Pondville in 1982, Pondville was still open. In the late 1920, cancer treatments were cutting edge. Chemotherapy, mesothelioma therapy, radiation therapy were very much in practice. Actually, radiation from radium was the primary means of treatment back then. Radioactive materials, I have learned from my reading, were also used in various bodily implants as a cancer-fighting means. Chemicals were used. Bodily tissues were treated, often removed and discarded as waste. Now, I have a few other points, and then I'm going to pose 4 questions. I thank you for your patience. Research and documents that also exist on the history of this hospital cast suspicion that there are other toxic materials not yet tested for. Another and very different concern in particular is number 6 fuel oil, which was stored in underground storage tanks behind 2 of the buildings up there, the Bigelow building and the Bailey building, and was the subject of an environmental report to public officials in May of 1999. So this is not new. But all this aside, no work has been done at this site to remove any known contamination since 2005. Now that's some at least 15 years ago.
Betsy, we are at about over 4 minutes. I don't want to cut you off, but if you could.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will simply end by saying that these 15 years later, I would like to pose 4 questions. Various contaminants noted first in 1988. Some have been addressed, some not. How will this be handled? DEP has identified various areas of concern. What solutions would be proposed for these issues? Kevin, I have just 2 more quick. Big problem, areas where buildings used to be. How can possible hazards be determined? And to end, what wastes were discarded in the landfill, and do other waste locations exist? Thank you very much. I know this was a loaded comment. I appreciate the time.
Thank you very much, Betsy. And as you're well aware, during these periods, this isn't the time where we're typically able to dialogue or respond to anything, but Blythe,
Absolutely.
we do have,
Absolutely.
as part of the liaison assignments for this board, a member of the board is assigned to be a PIP liaison. Is that the case?
Yes.
When we do have updates related to this, it would be appropriate to share them during our liaison updates?
Sure.
Yep.
Good.
So Betsy, we
Good.
can do that to be able to have that be part of the agenda from now on, so you don't have to be constrained into a 3-minute window.
That's fine. That's great. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody else for public comment this evening? I am seeing no hands at this time, unless somebody wants to wave at their camera quickly. Nope. All right, we'll be moving on to our next agenda item, which is to please consider naming new streets in the Waits Common at Norfolk subdivision. Blythe.
Thank you. The project that was approved by the ZBA that was formerly known as Abbeville, that Mr. DePlacido has had permitted. We're at the point where it would be helpful to have the streets that are going to be in that subdivision named, which, as you know, is an obligation of the select board. So in your packet is some back and forth between Mr. DePlacido, the historical commission, who always weighs in on these things, and our various officials. And so try to digest it all down for you. There's a public way and a private way. The public way recommendations are either Waits Way, which is preferred by the developer, or Waits Crossing. And for the private way, his recommendation is Jack's Pasture Place. The other ideas from Historical Commissioner Elliott Mills Road or Buckley and Mann Road. Or certainly anything that the board chooses to substitute, but those are the ideas that have come forward, and they're asking for your input and deciding what those would be.
Thank you, Blythe. Typically, we would hear from public safety to ensure that none of these would overlap. Have we heard back from them?
Yep, those are in your packet. Generally, there was no concerns that these sounded too much like something else, or would be confusing in some way. I mean, there was concern that maybe they were a little bit long, but not because they would be an issue.
Very good. So it looks like we have a recommendation from the Historical Commission on the private way, but we don't have one on the public way. Is that correct?
I think they were fine with either. I need to double check with what the chairman said, but let me just go back. Yes, if you, near the back of the packet, Ms. Pine weighs in to say she doesn't know much about Waite, but thinks Waite's Crossing is okay. It has a historical connection and it sounds nice. So I'd say they did weigh in on those. I just wasn't specific in my background.
Perfect, thank you. All right, start with any questions from the board. Anita?
I guess I was just curious about Jack's Pasture Place. What was the meaning of or where did that? I read about the gentleman Enoch Waite, but I didn't read about Jack. So it must just have a personal meaning to the developer?
I think so.
Jack's Pasture was the original name of the City Mill section of Norfolk, according to the Norfolk Historical Commission website.
Knew it was in there somewhere.
I guess I don't have any other questions. For the public way, if I was giving an opinion, I think Waite's Way sounds fine. I like the idea of having the historical significance, and so if Jack's Pasture Place has historical significance, I'm fine with that as well.
Thank you, Anita. Cece?
No, I agree with Anita. The day ending in Y, that seems to be where I end up going. But I do agree with Anita. I would say that it's interesting sort of reading through. And like Chuck wasn't a fan of Jack's Pasture Place, but then seems to sort of have backed off. And I just wonder if it's just how it sounds, right? But then he backed off. It doesn't seem like there's any particular issue. And I do like anytime there's sort of something that you can tie back to the original. So I don't have any issues.
Just going through the emails, it seemed like Betsy Pine was in favor of Waite's Crossing over Waite's Way, which I'm indifferent to the difference between the two of them. So I would typically lean towards whatever is preferred from the historical component. And then for the private way, like Cece had said, it looked like Jack's Pasture Place is kind of a mouthful. just because of the significance of this site, I kind of like Buckley Man, but Buckley and Man Road, I typically would never be in favor of a four-word street name. I'm not sure if we can make that Buckley Man Road instead of Buckley and Man.
You can, it's up to you.
But isn't the issue, sorry to chime in, that, like, if I look at the big, the first page of the emails, it seems that the reason he was changing it from Abbeville was because it was to the bad press. And then the first thing he sort of links it to is Buckley and Man, so wasn't that sort of a frying pan fire? Here. This right, I mean, you may be looking right at it.
Yep.
And maybe that isn't, but that's sort of how I read that.
So maybe Elliott Mills.
You just don't hear Enoch anymore as a name.
No.
Boardwalk Empire, Enoch Thompson. It's the only time I've ever heard that name in my life.
I never heard of it till today.
Nothing.
Does seem like somebody who would be riding around without his head.
Yes, rather.
All right, so it sounds like we're leaning towards Waits Crossing and Elliott Mills Road. From a board's perspective?
Yeah, that sounds lovely to me. Sure.
All right, well, it sounds like we have some general consensus with the board, but at this time, I'll open it up to anybody who is in attendance who would like to offer a question or comment related to our current agenda item of naming the new streets in the Waits Commons subdivision. If you do have a question or comment, please use the raise hand function at this time. Seeing no hands, so we will move forward with a motion. I move that the board vote to name the following streets in Waits Common at Norfolk subdivision. Waits Crossing as the public way and Elliott Mills Road as the private way. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 And it is unanimous.
As an aside, Mr. DePlacido will be joining us at the next meeting. There's been an option worked out for the sidewalk along Lawrence Street that we'd like to get approval on. That's slightly different than was originally thought about in the comprehensive permit. So going to bring that to you on the 20th.
Just as a thought, it would be nice to name some of our streets after women as well as men for the future to consider. I'm certain there's important women in our history as well.
Bessie Whitney comes to mind.
Yes.
She's not historical, though. She's very, very young, as am I. Yes, she is notable.
All right, that'll bring us to our next agenda item this evening, which was to please consider making appointments to the Zoning Board of Appeals. We have pushed this to our next meeting because as a point of procedure, the ZBA does need to evaluate a candidate from associate who is interested in becoming a full member. We need them to do that first. Once they do that, we can take this agenda item back up with a more specific and focused goal. So we'll be skipping that one this evening, and we'll be adding it to our next meeting. Our next item this evening is to please consider approval of a one-day beer and wine license and an entertainment license for live music for Zealous Beer Company for a pop-up beer and food event on Town Hill on the following dates from noon to 8 p.m. with setup beginning at 10:30 a.m. That is a long agenda title.
We like to be detailed, thorough.
Do you have any background on this one, Blythe?
Yes, so Jeff is joining us tonight. I can see his name on the screen. They would like to come back this year. They had a good season last year and would like to have some events again. So they proposed 4 dates, 2 Saturdays, 2 Sundays. They'd also had proposed rain dates, but to the board's preference that we make sure that the Hill is as available to as many different groups as possible. We asked them to focus on these 4, which they have. Their background is in your packet. They're planning to meet all the requirements related to COVID, to alcohol licenses, to getting their TIPS certifications for their servers. And as you can see, they're planning to have different vendors there on different days as well. So they're asking, in essence, for 4 one-day licenses and 2 entertainment permits because they're going to have music on just 2 of the days. And then we'll see how those go and whether you want to, they ask for more dates later and you want to provide them, that can be a follow-up item. We've run this by the departments. Everybody is fine with it. No issues arose, other than making sure the certifications for the servers was in place, which I know they're working on, and we'll have that done before the first event. So I would actually suggest Jeff may have some other points he'd like to make.
Thanks, Blythe. Welcome, Jeff. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good. Good to see you again.
I hope you all had a good winter.
We did, but it was without Zealous beer. So we're looking forward to some more events on Town Hill.
It must have been a bit disappointing, therefore.
It was. So can you tell us a little bit about what you have lined up for this year? If it's kind of in line with what we did at the end of last year, or if you had something new you were looking to try out?
No, it's very similar to last year, apart from a couple of additional new beers. I can tell you who the lineup for the food would be. We have Rib Republic on the 17th. We have Cousins Lobster on the 2nd. Yes, on the 2nd. Then on the 2nd of May. And then we have Rib Republic, and Papalias from Norfolk is coming back too. I tried to get Papalias for 2 dates, but he couldn't do one of them. It's always a tricky thing trying to get people to availability. We have a couple of different, I think, music-wise, I think we have Ken coming back, who's from Norfolk. And we also have someone called Jen, who I don't know, but apparently she is also from Norfolk. So we're trying to keep it partisan to Norfolk as much as we can.
Well, we appreciate that. Thank you very much, Jeff. I know that we heard a lot of positive feedback about the events last year, and I think as we get into the warmer weather, it's something that everybody's kind of looking forward to at this point. It's great to hear about the new partners that you're working with in terms of the food options. I'll throw out the same thing I said last year too, though. If we do want to book out some other dates where you don't necessarily have a food partner lined up, if you'd like us to reach out to the Norfolk businesses to see if anybody would be interested in partnering up with you, that's something that we would absolutely love to do to try to make that connection.
I am happy to do that. Yes.
Awesome. I'll open it up to any questions from the board at this time. Cece?
No?
Anita?
No, my only concern is the rising COVID numbers, so just kind of be careful about following whatever the state is recommending in terms of group size and procedures.
Understood.
No questions from my side. At this time, I will open it up to anybody in attendance this evening. If you have a question related to the Zealous pop-up beer garden events on Town Hill, please use the raise hand function at this time. I am not seeing any hands, so I believe we can move forward with a motion. So I would move that the board authorize the use of Town Hill by Zealous Beer Company for a pop-up beer and food event on Town Hill on the following dates from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. with setup beginning at 10:30 a.m. Saturday, April 17th, Sunday, May 2nd, Saturday, May 15th, and Sunday, June 6th.
Second.
Hearing a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. That is unanimous. Jeff, thank you so much again. We look forward to seeing you.
Thank you, and thank you for your support. I hope to see you there.
Absolutely.
Bye.
All right, that brings us to our next agenda item this evening, which is to please consider approval of the request by the Cactus and Succulent Society of Massachusetts to hold a cactus and succulent plant sale on the Sound Hill from 7 a.m. until 5 p.m. on Saturday, September 18, 2021. In the mask, saying succulent is really difficult.
It seems like just like a real joy of life and speech and.
Blythe, what background do we have to offer for this item?
They've had this event for a number of years, and it's gone very well. They'd like to have it again in September. We have no departments have any issues with it. We think it's great, so recommend you approve it.
Thank you, Blythe. Anita, any questions or
I
comments?
think it's fabulous.
I love it. I have a kid who's like very into cacti and et cetera. It's awesome.
Very good. All right. Well, with that, I would move that the board authorize the use of Town Hill by the Cactus and Succulent Society for a plant sale on September 18th, 2021. We hear a second?
Second.
Hearing a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? There we go. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Our next item this evening is to please consider the use of ESSER2 funding to reduce Norfolk's assessment for the Tri-County School District in FY 2022. Blythe, go right ahead.
There's a letter in your packet from the business manager indicating that this portion of funds that would be dedicated to Norfolk can be used to offset our assessment. They've actually already planned it in their budget, and we've planned it in ours, but it does require that the board actually votes to allow that proportional share to be used. So that's why it's on your agenda for action. And I think Todd can weigh in if there's any other questions you have that I might not be able to answer.
Anything you'd like to add from the onset there, Todd? Okay. Questions, Cece?
I'm wondering why it is that somebody wouldn't want to do this, right? Because I'm looking at the letter, and it's talking about the new guidance from DESE with respect to the elementary and secondary education program, et cetera, and then it says that further guidance has indicated that it is up to cities and towns to determine whether they would like the district to exercise this provision, and that community should affirm this decision through a vote, et cetera, et cetera. What reason would there be for somebody not to exercise this provision? Is there some sort of something bad lurking in the future, like some usurious interest rate, or like what, you're on the hook forever?
I'm going to go with a simple answer, which is
I don't know what's going on.
someone determined that a vote was required, so they're simply asking you to do that, to do what seems logical.
And along the lines of other grants that are usually distributed, most boards or committees do have to vote to approve grants. This being part of a grant, that's part of the process. There's no usurious interest rates that I'm aware of.
Cool.
Anita, any questions or comments?
None.
None from my end either. At this time, we'll open it up to anybody who has any questions or comments related to our current agenda item on the reduction of the Norfolk's assessment for Tri-County School. I am seeing no hands at this time. So with that, I would move that the board vote to authorize the town's proportional share of the ESSER2 allocation for FY22 of $6,505 to be used as an assessment for the Tri-County School District. I hear a second?
Second.
A second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
That is unanimous. Thank you. Our next item this evening is to please consider the approval of the request from the town clerk to allow for in-person early voting hours for the May 4th annual town election.
So the governor recently signed a bill to restore and extend the provisions of the changes made in 2020 to allow more flexibility for municipal elections. And so with that, the town can again offer early in-person voting, which we can do here at Town Hall. The town clerk is recommending that, and she'd like to do this, she's listed 4 dates that are in her background about that ahead of the May 4th election, and asking the board to approve it.
Good, thank you. Questions or comments, Anita?
I think early voting, the more we can do to help our voters vote, the better. I think that's fabulous.
Cece?
No.
None from my end either. I'll open it up for anybody who has any questions or comments related to the current agenda item for allowing in-person for early voting hours for the May
So Better Than Soup, which operates craft beer cellar, wants to change the name to Just Better Beer. And in order to do so, because it's an alcohol license, the state requires that the select board, the licensing authority, sign off on that change, and then submit that paperwork to the state. The company can't change the actual sign name until the board approves the change of DBA. So that's why it's on your agenda. If you approve it, we'll turn it into the state. They'll put it on file, and the name on the sign can be updated.
Thank you very much, Blake. I swore I saw somebody who had Just Better Beer or something of that nature in the room. Is there somebody who wished to speak to this request that's in attendance this evening?
Hi, it's Andy Lippett. I own the store. I don't really need to add anything other than to say thanks. Thanks for hearing this. We're looking forward to a nice new sign with a nice new name.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andy. Any questions from the board? Anita?
No? I'm just curious, by no means a challenge, it's just interesting to me. Why is it, because you're expanding the lines that you're gonna carry? Why the change? What motivated it?
Just time to have a new sign, a new name. I'm currently a franchise. I soon will not be a franchise. I'll be striking out on my own.
Got it. That's all.
So just separating from the franchise with a new name.
Makes total sense. Thank you.
Nothing else will change, actually. Just the flag.
No other comments from my perspective either. So with that, I would move that the board vote to approve an application for amendment requested by Better Than Soup Incorporated for a change of DBA from craft beer cellar to Just Better Beer.
Second.
Hearing a second, any further discussion? None. All those in favor? Aye. That is unanimous. All right, well, that does it for our action items this evening. We'll be moving on to our next agenda item, which is to please discuss the proposed FY22 budget and review the Department of Public Works proposed budget. Mike?
Yes, so as you had requested, we have had each of our three major departments here to talk about their budgets, and tonight it's DPW night. We've got Director Blair Crane and Assistant Director Barry Louvervier to talk about that with you. We've got a short PowerPoint to show you about the changes in both the general fund and the two enterprise funds. And then we'd also include detail in the background of all the puts and takes that go into this budget. And then when we're concluded that, Todd and I want to go over with you where we stand on the budget overall. So, Barry and Blair, if you can take it away.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
That's, does it seem loud or?
It's good for the people at home if it's.
It seems louder than usual.
Yeah.
So I'll just start with a basic goal. Barry and I sat down this year and started to look at things over the past year that we did well, things that we didn't, where we didn't meet our expectations. And the first one on our list here is that we'd like to reinstate the superintendent position, to
care of. So we would like to deal with that. We'd like to address the increasing landfill leachate removal costs. As you well know, the landfills that we have since the early 90s, we have to remove any water that comes out of, or leachate as a word, that comes out of the landfill. For whatever reason this year, and we've gone back and historically looked at it, for whatever reason, the leachate volume has increased more so than I would have expected, and there's obviously a continued cost to remove that. It does go into a storage tank. We have no choice but to move it, so we would like to try to cover those costs. And lastly, to establish a vision for mandated stormwater costs. As you're well aware, that's a long and lengthy topic, but one that we can't sidestep. So there is certainly costs involved there. So by creating a division and including it in our budget, it would be an annual item. Going to an overview of the numbers, really self-explanatory. We have been able to trim a few items within the department. Obviously, the transfer station is one to date. We've been able to streamline a lot of issues there. Certainly a work in progress, but I feel as a lot of the communities around us have struggled in this particular area, I feel that we're making strides to do better there. So we've been able to cut our costs there significantly, which is going to help us in other areas. So I think the entire department is a work in progress, but that's one in particular that shines. Public Works divisions, as I said before, to streamline daily operations with the superintendent and to realign internal labor for recreation. On the expense side of it, we'd like to increase engineering by $10,000, as I stated before, as the same with shade tree maintenance by $10,000. And then one item that we'd like to add there, add $5,000 to, is the lights that we put on Town Hill. We don't have the equipment, so we have to have a tree service come in who has bucket trucks to put lights up and to help us decorate Town Hill every year. That's a considerable cost, so we would like to try to budget for that.
Can I just jump in for a second on that?
Sure.
We've been budgeting to put them up. What we haven't been budgeting to do is take them down.
Yes.
And it's not good for the trees for them to stay up. So we're trying to just, I abhor structural deficits in budgets, and we've been putting them up and taking them down and somehow cutting something else to make that happen. We're trying to be more realistic about what those things actually cost.
And there's a cost to leaving the lights out all year. There's a cost to all of that. The lights, are good for a few months a year, but they're certainly not year-round. And anybody that's familiar with Christmas lights, if you lose a bulb, you could spend the better part of a month trying to figure out which one it is that's gone awry. So we found that it was just better to take them down once the season is over, and to be able to put them away, all set, ready to go, so that in the fall, when the winter comes, when Christmas time comes, we could put them back up again rather easily.
On the expenses for the engineering, we're just shifting the budget. So we had allocated $20,000 in the highway budget to help us. Our concern going into this year, at this time last year, was were we going to be able to handle all the work that we're going to do? So we had a line item in the highway department to get outside resources if we needed it. We didn't need it, so by shifting that 20 grand over to the admin engineering budget, we were able to increase that budget. So we're not asking for more money there, we're just shifting it. And the shade tree maintenance budget is where we're looking for an increase in that budget. Eversource has been great. They've worked with us over the last several years on their hazardous and dead tree removal program near their power lines. But we still have a lot left that we need to chew on.
On the last page here, DPW shared and fixed costs. As I stated before, the landfill leachate removal. Really, at this point, we feel that it depends on the type of winter you've had, the amount of topical rain you get, whether it's rain or snow melt. So you're really at the mercy of the weather there. But needless to say, one way or the other, that the leachate has to be removed. So there is a cost there. You just, unfortunately, it's hard to put a finite number on it. To create a stormwater division and slight reduction, we've had a slight reduction in vehicle expenses over the last year. Last year we bought the new roll-off, so that helped us without having to put a lot of money into the antiquated vehicle that we had before, and we've been able to make some cuts with regards to taking care of our vehicles. So salary reductions, I can let Barry talk a little bit about as he went through the budget.
Yeah,
And,
so what we try to do is, in order to facilitate that position for the superintendent, we kind of went through, like we did last year, and just nipped and tucked little areas that we could see reductions in to get the ultimate goal. So luckily, this year, we actually have a company that's currently looking at upgrading our existing containers so we can get a cheap fix. So we're looking at kind of fixing what we have in place and then foregoing new roll-off containers next year in order to get that superintendent in there. We reduced supplies and maintenance and repair costs. And then the big one for us is, reducing the trash disposal costs by going to the bag program like we implemented. We're actually seeing a reduction there. And then the big hit here was a transfer in salaries. So we lost a higher paid employee. We were able to bring in another employee at a lesser value, thus overseeing the overall 10.3 decrease in the transfer station budget. As for the water, we're doing really well with the water, so we were able to decrease that by 7.3%. Again, we were just taking a look at line items we had in there. We're able to nip and tuck things. We've actually changed some of our chemicals that we use in town on our wells, so that reduces a lot of our expenses. Our engineering and contract services has gone down. That's our outside consultant, Whitewater. I had them take a look at their budget and really sharpen their pencil to help us out, which was great. Excuse me, they increased. Sorry, we're the wrong one. They did sharpen their pencil. They didn't increase as much as I thought it was going to do. Our retained earnings is going down. We're paying down our debt services, and we were able to reduce just our overall expenses in the water division by $10,000.
As you recall, the retained earnings was to put enough funds in the Holbrook Street Well project to finish that. We were concerned about whether we had a sufficient contingency. So we're on track with that this year. We won't need it again next year.
Doing really well with that.
Yeah, we definitely have been on track there.
The wastewater enterprise fund, I'll let Blair speak to this one. He's been involved with this one a little bit more than I have recently.
Yeah, this one has been a kind of a long group effort between Blythe, myself, and Todd as we've worked our way through the wastewater enterprise fund, and I'm not sure we're at the end yet, but we're certainly closing in on it. We've talked with all the entities that use the wastewater treatment plant and had a realignment of expenses. Management fee, which Todd could certainly show some history there with, but that has been implemented. We're looking at the overall state of the wastewater treatment plant itself, which will certainly streamline costs going forward. Reduced operating expenses this past year, and unforeseen expenses funded by retained earnings, $20,000.
I would point out that the overall bill to the users is going to go down slightly, the 3.2% you see at the bottom. When we met with each of them this year, we heard some frustration that the costs keep going up for the plant. So we really have taken a hard look at what do we need to operate it. But we also had to explain to them that if we have an unforeseen event that happens at the plant, per the state's law on enterprise funds, we have to have an item in our budget called unforeseen expenses. And so what we're going to do is fund that $20,000 from the retained earnings that we have, hoping that we don't ever have an unforeseen event, that the capital work ongoing that they're paying for will keep the plant in good shape. And if we do come to the point where we have an expense, then we'll have to recoup that from them at that point. But we're trying to be intellectually honest with them about what it takes to run it and not charge them more than that, but also have the ability to deal with the situation as it comes up, and continue to make sure that the bottom line on the retained earnings for the plant are responsible, because that had gotten out of hand a little bit over a few years, and that's what, led by Todd, we've been working to sort out. So we're gonna also meet with the users in the next week or two, set up a meeting. Never before have they ever seen the budget before. They just get a bill during the year, and so we're trying to be more proactive and reach out to them and explain to them in more detail than this, exactly what's happening next year. Did I miss anything, Todd?
So with respect to the wastewater, you'll notice that the increase is 15,000 and change, but we're actually using 20,000 of retained earnings. So there is an overall reduction for the budget as far as the members are concerned. But for us to operate on a going forward basis with that uncertainty and that contingency in our back pocket. So we won't have to bill to basically give monies back. We'll just set it aside, and then, like Blythe was indicating earlier, we'll revisit this on a year-by-year basis as we go through the budget process. Maybe the retained earnings needs to be replenished, or we reduce even more. So we utilize 25,000 as the amount. 20 of it would go for that, and 5,000 to offset some of the other expenses or what have you.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation, Blair, Barry, Blythe, Todd. Much appreciated. Appreciate the background. I think the first thing that struck me was how much I appreciated the effort to not only propose an efficiency add to the budget in the addition of the new superintendent, but then to offset the expense for said addition by finding money elsewhere in your budget to move it over. So really do appreciate that, because it would have been real easy just to come in and say, this is going to make things better. This is what we have to spend money on.
Yep.
So thank you for that. At this time, I'll open it up to questions from the rest of the board, starting with Cece.
Just going back to the superintendent, when was it that the superintendent position was abrogated? Was that last year?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And now, what's the expense to the town of not having a superintendent?
So as far as I know, before I came here, there were 3 superintendents. There was a superintendent for highway and grounds, a superintendent for transfer and vehicle maintenance, and a water superintendent. With different people retiring, I was hired on to, for all intents and purposes, take over highway and grounds. And that morphed a little bit as I became more acclimated to the town of Norfolk. And then once I was appointed director, we never went back to replace that position. So essentially what used to be done with 5, a director, an assistant director, and 3 superintendents, has become Barry and myself. So that's where we find that we're having the shortfall. Essentially during the day, the 2 of us just, with having 5 divisions and 20 employees out throughout town, there's too much area to cover and not enough time to chase what needs to be done in the field versus what needs to be done in the office as well. And that's where we find our daily shortfall is you have to kind of pick your poison. Obviously, the residents in town certainly expect the level of service that we try to give them every single day. But there are times when that can't be done from a truck or in the middle of the night or whenever that is. So there's an overlap there that Barry and I find that we daily come up short with. So we're trying to figure out, and certainly I don't believe by any stretch that 5 people are needed there, but I think that having 1 point in the field on a daily basis to make things more efficient overall between the 5 divisions is paramount.
So what does it cost the town without having this extra person? I'll restate it because I asked it, and
Yeah.
the sort of what I feel like I'm sort of picking up from the presentation, and part of this I'll have to go back and sort of go through the minutes, because my recollection was that there was some sort of an assertion that the model that we currently have was going to be what we were going to do, which is why it was okay in a town with one traffic light. I don't know, maybe we have two now. I don't know. A town our size, having such a deep bench of professionals, the sort of assurance, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be, right? That was a year ago and it's been a crazy year, was, oh, but we're getting rid of this particular thing. And now all of a sudden we're like, hey, guess what we're looking at? We're looking for a supervisor. And it may be, I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no, I'm just talking about some of my concerns, but when I sort of read it, it is to reinstate this position, to optimize efficiency, and then sort of a bunch of words that sort of suggest that, you know, when I hear optimizing efficiency, I sort of think, well, is there a cost to the town, of actual dollars in, dollars out cost to the town for this sort of non-optimized, inefficient model that you've sort of found yourself in? Because what I think that is that if I'm a professional, right, I'm a director, not all of my work is going to be within the confines, and I'm sure yours isn't, of when I'm at my desk. Some of my work is coming home with me, and it gets done at home, and it's not time and a half, and it just gets done whenever it gets done. And so is there, beyond it's not pleasant, and maybe it really needs to happen anyway, but is there a financial impact to the town of not having a supervisor?
Yeah.
That's what I mean by what's the cost to the town.
Right, so maybe the best way to describe it is to give you a small picture of how the day, you know, a typical day. So at 7, Barry and I get in at 6 o'clock, 6:30 in the morning, kind of have meet between the two of us, and at 7 o'clock every morning I have the foreman from each division come to the office. So there's 5 foremen, and they all come upstairs, and we discuss what their projects are for the day based on what we feel the priority is. That might be from emails overnight or the day before. Weather certainly impacts all of that. And then each one of those foremen has 2 or 3, 4, depending on which particular division we're talking about, to go out and to try to manage that on any given day. Obviously, in the Public Works Department, depending on what division that is, the day changes as the day progresses. So a lot of times, whether it's a cemetery plot that needs to be sold, that's something that Barry typically takes care of, where he'll have to get up and go sell the cemetery plot. Or it'll be a meeting with, you know, Chief Stone or Blythe to have to do something. Any given day is different than the day before. So the cost to the town, I feel, is that we do have foremen that are out there, but I don't feel as though, even though they're all in the same room at 7 o'clock, so they all know what the other divisions are all doing, I feel like there's nothing, once they leave my office at 7 o'clock, I feel there's nothing to tie them all together to work as a cohesive team. They all go their separate directions. They have their marching orders, and off they go. Highway might go out to do potholes for the day. Grounds might go to Pond Street and mow. Water is going to do their checks of all their pumps and do what they normally do on any given morning. If and when that changes, there's no one person to go to try to pull all of that together. So Barry and I find ourselves trying to chase down whether it's that individual employee or who can do what. There's nothing to track all of that as the day progresses. Things change on top of all the other things that we do. So it's just a matter of trying to be as efficient as possible with the manpower that we have. So there is, to try to put a monetary number on what doesn't get accomplished, I don't know how I would go about doing that.
So, which is, I hear you now, but so putting it another way, it's fair to say that if it were left the way it is not, right, because sometimes it's not, the town's not hemorrhaging dollars that are trackable and reportable, right? Because otherwise you would have said,
yes,
we're losing $2 billion a week, and here's why, because we need to have, you know, Sally and Tim come in and work time and a half and then blah, 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 right? I didn't hear that. So that's Oh, and I'll go back and do the other research later. And then my other question was, you talked about the fact that you wanted to have things built in to enable you to be shovel ready for when grants come along. What grants, and we'll just use the last year, and then we can go farther back. What grants have you missed out on as a result of not having been shovel ready? Like how much money?
All of them.
We'll say, okay, what are they? Like, I don't know what
So
they are.
the complete streets, so all the effort the town did to go through the complete streets process, unless we have shovel-ready sidewalk projects, we can't even get in the queue to be looked at. We have MVP grants that we've missed because we don't have projects ready. There's paving projects, there's all these things out there that they want us to, in order to be able to go and chase after these money with all 351 other cities and towns, we have to have a project ready to go in the queue so they can say, okay, these guys are ready, they're serious, we're gonna give them money. Drainage, just basically everything infrastructure related that we need to chase after, we have to focus on getting things shovel ready.
And so do you know in advance, like, obviously you can't just sort of assume that there's gonna be projects in a bunch of different arenas and then just get them shovel ready. I'm assuming that you have a plan where you assess what grants are coming up, are typical, et cetera.
Yep.
In the last year, can you, not asking for, like, it's not a quiz, I don't need you to tell me right this second. I do want to know at some point in order to be able to quantify when somebody, like, it may be that this is the best idea ever in the history of ideas, and when someone starts yapping at me about it, not that anyone in Norfolk would do that, but like just theoretically someone did, right? Like an imaginary fictional person decided to tell me that I suck because I thought that wasn't a bad idea. I want to be able to say, do you know that not just all of them, but like there was $47,000 that was left on the table. Obviously not guaranteed, right? Because as you pointed out, there's umpteen other towns competing for it, but certainly, definitely, we're not getting it if we're not shovel ready. So that would just be something that I would want to know a little more about. Other than
Easy,
just
what I
sort of
could
this
give you right now
ephemeral.
is the complete streets, so they can give up to $400,000 per project. That's for the sidewalk projects and stuff. So if we were ready on some of our sidewalk projects, we could have got up to like $400,000 in order to be able to do
But
those
that just
projects.
still somewhat feels.
They require you to
Speculative.
have an engineered plan to
Yes.
turn in on something that's in your prioritization plan. We got the prioritization plan done. We've never done the engineering. You say, and here's our project, state, please give us 400,000. If we spend some money to do that, we can see that money flow into the town.
And how, okay, so those are the kinds of things
Yep.
that I may just want to dribble, just
Yep.
to see, all right, there's 400 potentially, but is it, all right, we get this far along and no one ever, we know has ever gotten it, or no, they actually really do
They do
this,
really-
and so-
yeah, it's been
so
going
those are
around
the
for
kinds of
years.
things.
I actually.
Shared streets.
Yeah, if you go to the Complete Streets websites, MassDOT, they have a listing from 2015 to current of all the towns that got funding and what the amounts of funding they got. I have all those in PDFs.
And can you take it to the granular level, not so granular, of saying, you know, if we were to look at them now for 2022, and we spent X dollars, we think we could get Y dollars back, roughly.
So
Like, I don't want to hold anyone to a number, but I want to be able to have that conversation with you or with other people.
I think when you
about that.
apply for these also, that, you know, these committees that are, you know, putting these grants out there are looking at how serious are you? You know, do you
Right, no,
have
no, I
do you have a
absolutely
vested
hear that,
interest
yeah.
up front? You know, you've already spent the money, you already have it ready to go, and then it helps with their deadlines too, because sometimes their deadlines can be
Right,
pretty
and
stringent.
then they have their own people. I absolutely get that piece. This is just more about the metrics in order to better understand the having money to make money
Yep.
piece of the formula. So that's,
I think the prioritization plan that we laid out that has each of the individual projects with the cost estimates associated to it would be a great place to be able to reference in case any of that comes up. I mean, we went through that, was it 2 years ago? Or?
Last year.
last year.
But we're actually in the middle
Only
of.
last- That's what I'm saying, like, all of this was a conversation we had last year, and my brain, I'm like, I don't know, it's like 40 years ago.
So we're in the middle of parlaying that right now. So we sent out that RFP for the ADA assessment and the sidewalk study. So what we're gonna do is basically, this is the opportunity to take the complete streets. Once we get all the sidewalk ratings and conditions and everything, wrap this sucker up into a giant sidewalk project. So then we can kind of sit back and analyze Part of it, we're doing a gap analysis. So we're gonna look at areas that should have sidewalks, shouldn't have sidewalks. So this is gonna be a complete package for us to sit here, have dollars, that'll be part of it. What is it gonna take to put a new sidewalk here or fix a sidewalk here? This is all gonna go into being us, having us ready to go for these projects. So, unfortunately, I hate it, but there's a lot of planning that goes into us to get us in the position so that we can actually chase after the money. And that's where we are
Right, and
right
that
now.
makes sense, and I also understand that by shovel-ready, you're not saying, look, we finished a sidewalk. Right? Like, I understand where that, that piece. I just want more, and I understand about the plan, but I would just like to know, if we do this little piece, all our buddies managed to get something, and we think it would be a beyond just being, I'm mindful of the fact that if you're shovel-ready, when it's, even if other monies come in, then you can roll, and it obviously advantages the town to have more sidewalks. But beyond that practical piece, it's just the numbers piece on the grants. That was my question. And I don't need to know, obviously I don't need to know it tonight.
And I think we look at it too
can
from
schlep over here.
a perspective of what are the odds? Obviously,
Well, that was the other
you
thing
don't
I
want to put the money out there if you have no shot of ever getting
Right, exactly.
what you're going after.
Right, we need town, right, yeah, so
Right.
that would be a
You
second,
know,
which I
so-
understand is harder to do, but you can somewhat,
Well, you can look at the
Sort of
list
look
and you can
back,
see
right.
what the communities around you, obviously there's a huge difference between the amount of money that comes to this part of the state versus the Berkshires, let's say. Just from the amount of people and the traffic and all
Right,
the
right,
pieces
right,
you have.
right.
So those factors all weigh in. So you can parlay those into, some sort of an odds
right.
basis for whether or not it's worth it to spend the money on whatever it
Which
is you're
was sort of
looking.
the second, that's great, because that was sort of the
Target.
other piece, like, it's not just, my question isn't just, which I see that you get, my question isn't just, all right, what's out there, because I can go to, and like, Google available grants,
Right.
it's what's out there that is within our sweet spot, and we have a chance of acquiring, so I'll hunt you guys down later. That was my other question.
Okay.
That's it, those are my questions right now.
Thank you. Anita?
I think I'm exhausted of questions.
Yeah, Lloyd.
I'd just like to weigh in on the superintendent, because if someone was to ask me what my highest priority in the budget is this year, it's to put this position back. I mean, I recall somewhat along the lines what Cece did last year was that we were in a tough budget year, and there was a major change with filling the position. It was a challenging process, and the comment was made about 1 or 2 traffic lights, and we're a small town, we don't need this. And I felt at the time that the right thing to do was to follow that and give it a try and see if we, how we would do with 2 people. And I absolutely believe that, there's a cost to having another person. There certainly is. But for me, it's, as a town administrator and overseeing the department, they're not able to meet my needs some of the time. And it's not because they don't both try really hard. It's just a matter of the little things that they chase down leave us no time for the big things. An example is our water withdrawal permits coming up soon. That takes a lot of work. We need to talk about cemetery expansion. That takes a lot of work to plan. We've spent an inordinate amount of time winning our, the case with Lake Street,
Yeah.
trying to resolve a 7-year project that, we couldn't get done. We're going to be going for this, we're going for this hazard mitigation plan grant to get some federal dollars to, again, prepare to be able to get other money, and that's going to take a lot of time. And there's been times I recall a situation where I was chasing Blair for something, and he's like, I got to call around and find out where the trash bags aren't at Walgreens. So he's after that detail, but the bigger picture that I'm looking for, I got to get back to you. I got to do it tonight, hope to do it tomorrow. Trying to work through and make sure that we're meeting the needs of recreation is just too much, and I really feel passionately that this is something we need to put back. And it may not realize exact dollar savings, but it will realize better service and better planning. And I think Public Works, and this isn't a reflection on them at all, I think overall just in most communities, people don't realize the breadth of all they do. And you get things like, windstorms in the middle that suddenly take them out of commission for 3 days because they're chasing all those crises, and the things I needed still didn't get done. And so I know I'm going on a bit because I care about it a lot. So that's my pitch.
No, and the bandwidth component is important too, especially from your level and having oversight and looking for a return on some of the requests and items that you have designated over to them. Makes sense.
Yep.
Cece, did you have any other questions for Blythe related to the position before we move on?
No, I mean, I do need to go back and review. I certainly hear you, and I'm mindful of the sort of the kudos that you've pulled money from elsewhere. But another way one could look at the kudos for pulling money from elsewhere is you don't use the money, and that money is available for other things that the town might need. And so, like, I think it needs to be looked at holistically as part of the entire budget, like what's going on with the teachers and with other areas that we're sort of coming back from in terms of the pandemic. And I don't mean revenue stream, I mean in terms of the needs of the town, in terms of expenditures. And just because I'll admit that I am wired to think that I'm very happy to see when someone finds a place to fund expenditures. I am even more happy when they just find some money and then they hold it for other places that there might be need. So, but like I said, I'll go back and review. I hear the passion for the DPW supervisor position, and we'll sort of weigh it with everything else, but I just wanted to know those things.
All right, at this time, I'll open it up to anybody who's in attendance. If they have any questions or comments related to the presentation of the Public Works budget, please use the raise hand function at this time. I am seeing one hand. Donna, go right ahead.
Hi, Donna Jones, North Street. I was part of the Smart Streets survey part, the in-person presentation that identified 3 dangerous intersections in town that we haven't been able to engineer to get a fix on it. So I heard a frequent mention of we need sidewalks, but I would think the dangerous intersection would be more important, but wanted to be sure that it was mentioned that those are needed too. Thank you.
I'm not sure if you guys heard that, but Donna was inquiring. Okay, go right ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big picture stuff we have to look at. So again, there are grants and stuff out there. As part of the, the complete streets analysis and this overall study we're gonna do, we'll be able to rank those. Unfortunately, if we start redesigning intersections, we're talking significant costs, millions of dollars. So I'm thinking, Blair and I are trying to look at the low-hanging fruit. Let's get out the gate slowly, and then we can start looking at these bigger picture projects.
Thanks, Barry. Thank you, Donna. Any other questions or comments from those in attendance? I'm seeing none at this time. So thank you very much, Blair. Thank you very much, Barry. We appreciate the presentation and outline and the Q&A.
Thank you for having us.
You guys have a fantastic evening.
And can I say, I drove down Medway Street to get here, and it was like butter. Really nice, very nice. Thank you.
We'll be starting paving soon,
Yes,
so
paving season is just around the corner.
I'll
as
be
soon as the
keeping
weather
everybody
turns.
posted as to what we're doing.
Hydrant flushing here next week, and paving season shortly thereafter. So there we go. Hopefully
Very
winter's over.
Yeah. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Blake, did you want to talk about the more general view of the budget before we move on?
I do. I'd like to have Mr. Lindmark take us through it, since as in his role as finance director, he does recommend the balanced budget, and we've been working on that, so we'd like to give you the highlights of that, yes.
Perfect. Go right ahead, sir.
Sure. So prior to today, going through the budget, again, we were at about 3.53% overall increase. And again, reflecting back over the years, on average, we were at about a 4.42% overall for the past 22 years. Some of the key items that we had to kind of address with respect to the school, potentially putting back a couple of positions at the Norfolk elementary school systems. We need to cover the health insurance. So while we anticipate about 3 additional hires, that equates out to be about a $57,000 contribution for healthcare over the entire year if they were to do a family plan. Not to say that they come on board and they don't sign up, but if they do come on board and they do sign up for a family plan, we need to have the monies available. And again, that works out to be about $57,000 with all the rate adjustments, with the rate increases, plus the gives and takes throughout the year of people on plans, off plans, retirees, things of that sort. It were actually worked out to be an increase from my original estimate of about $32,468. We talked about COLA adjustments. That's all the department heads or departments with the adjustments for salaries on the town side. Did not include police, fire, or DPW. Those budgets were presented as is in the original budget, so those still stand. Adding those back in equated out to an additional $40,228. We had already identified $38,000 of that expense initially as part of the overall original budget plan that we talked about previously. So it's just a smidge more of $2,228 with that small adjustment for the building department's COLA adjustments. Town council, while we were previously, a few years ago, $90,000, we had to increase because of a lot of expenses that came along, and last year we were at $120. We anticipate to hopefully curtail some of those expenses, and so we lowered that to about $10,000 to $110,000. We feel pretty comfortable keeping it at that amount for now. We talked about adding ClearGov, which is the subscription service for information technology. So that's going to add to their line item expenses of about $11,000. Originally, we proposed about $13,000. We have $2,000 in savings because we're starting a little bit earlier in this year's budget with getting up and running. That will help identify for the residents of the community as well as anybody else who wants to go in and look at our information, both budget-wise and as well as actual expenses on a department basis. We're in process of setting all that stuff up, so it's not functional as of yet, but that is in the works. Going to some of the schools, we looked at King Philip. They had their budget certified not too long ago. Based on that budget certification, it was actually a reduced amount from what they initially told me. So we're actually saving $15,603 there. That could be subject to further reductions. We're not sure at this point yet, but my understanding is that there might be some more discussions on an ongoing basis with their particular budget. A couple years ago, Norfolk budgeted a set amount for KP's budget, and the towns of Rentham and Plainville decided to go with a little bit lower of an amount. Obviously, if that does occur again, and again, we have a little time to figure all this out, but if that does happen, we can obviously reduce that amount prior to actual adoption of the budget for some more savings as well, if that is, recognized and realized. Norfolk Agricultural, initially they had 15. I confirmed with them they anticipate 14 students, so we have a reduction of $2,200 there. And then Veteran Services, we initially put in at $32,000. We identified that some of the expenses were not going to be incurred this year, so we've lowered it to $4,000. Overall adjustments with the hefty health increase on the health insurance and covering all the COLAs adds that $52,120 in those expenses that have been identified. And again, we're looking to cover those expenses, and again, keeping it at the 3.53 that we initially proposed, utilizing monies from the prison mitigation. We had $267,000 prison mitigation that was received for this year, and based on historical receipts of those monies and anticipation of receiving those monies on a going forward basis, we assume those to be about the same level. So we're only budgeting much less than half that amount in order to bring this budget in a balanced amount.
And I would just add to that, we're not planning to use any free cash this year. I think it's important to realize that we're not planning to go back to exactly where we were before COVID. Trying to wean off free cash, and ideally we would wean off prison mitigation as well. But we can underfund some line items on the town side, but I'd be very concerned about underfunding the 3 new positions that school needs. They feel they need. The health insurance is on our side of the ledger, so that's something we can't avoid.
And then historically, talking about the free cash, in our 19 budget, we utilized 380,000. We had 25,000 come from a transfer. So we had 405,000 to help balance the budget that year. In FY '20, 233. And since 15, when I came on board, fiscal year 16 and so forth, the numbers that have been utilized have been diminishing because of my reluctance to utilize free cash because it's a one-time thing within the budget. So 163, 197 in FY '20, 124, 679 in FY '21, 0 in FY '22 with no transfers.
When was the last time that we did not utilize free cash for the budget?
I would have to go back, but I would venture to say that it's been utilized almost every single budget until now.
I actually suggested to Todd that, if we do this year, that we actually think about self-imposing a free cash policy in the future and get, with maybe some input from advisory, decide that we're gonna, use it in a certain way going forward. We're gonna dedicate a certain amount to the rainy day fund. We're gonna dedicate a certain amount to OPEB or capital, and we're not gonna use it for the budget if we can be disciplined about that, because it leaves us better positioned to deal with all the other things that come up, for a town. So.
Absolutely.
So.
And please keep in mind, this budget includes all the requests from Norfolk Public School as is, no changes there, so they're getting back to where they kind of need to be whole. Again, it identifies KP's budget, the other schools' budgets as is, with no cuts. We haven't had to go to the departments really. They're, as KP transitioned from superintendent a few years back, where they were bringing in budgets of 10, 15%, 20%, and then we have to go do the song and dance back and forth. All of our department heads, have always brought in budgets within reason, and even more so over the last couple of years to identify, okay, do we really need to have this particular item? No, or, it's been a much thinner, so which is attributable to why there's less and less free cash being utilized, because we're identifying those areas.
And Todd, how much have we seen over the last couple of years as a total amount of prison mitigation money that we've gotten? It's been pretty consistently around the same number.
250.
250? Thank you.
I think it was 267 this year, 263 last year, and then diminishing, but around 250, yeah.
And you've only allocated 100,000 of that to Help Mountain. Thank you. I'll ask one more question, then I'll pass it along. When we reduce legal fees, is there a specific use or case in mind that we don't feel will be recurring to the point where we feel comfortable reducing that, or is that just more of a feeling of the way things are
The
trending?
last 2 months have been tracking better. We were at $4,000 in January and $7,000 in February. Before that, we were $10,000 and $12,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
We've resolved some litigation, so, trying to be more careful about those things, and hopefully it will be lower. I can never really say, but our goal would be that it's lower.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very good. I'll toss it to the rest of the board for questions, comments. Anita?
No, I appreciate, you just have a sense of people really trying to do things better and do things right and being more transparent about how things are going, and you can see it, and so thank you very much.
Sure.
Cece?
Nope. So if you're okay with it, we were gonna transmit this to advisory and let them know where things look like. We'd ask you at the next meeting to kind of determine that this or something along these lines is where you want to propose to town meeting, so that advisory can then decide their position on it. They'd ideally like to not finish, they'd like to finish meeting on the 14th, but I said to them, we don't have another meeting until the 20th, so you may need to wait till the 21st or do it right before town meeting, If they do it on the 21st, it can be in the warrant book, their recommendation. So that's just timing.
Thank you. Todd, I'm sorry, I have one more question for you. What was the original increase that you had for King Philip?
2.08.
That's Norfolk's assessment, right?
Yeah. And now it's 1.92.
Oh, you mean percentage?
Yep.
So 1.92.
You know what that is in dollars now?
15,603. $15,603.
That's the savings.
That's the savings, right?
The amount is it's on, this page in your book.
Hold on.
The new budget numbers are after the pink page. I should have told you that Judith put it in your book.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to pull it up on my email.
Yeah. So the new number would be $9,039,693.
$9,055,296 was the original.
I mean, we still, the House version of the budget haven't come out, or the Senate version, so this is still the governor's budget. We wouldn't anticipate it would change, but it might. But, I think we'll be able to deal with that if it did.
And our local receipts, we kept them low, too.
I'm just evaluating what the scale would be, knowing that, our friends in Plainville had a failed override that did not work out for them yesterday. So they will likely be going back to asking Philip for some help. And I'd just like to see what kind of wiggle room that gives us on our end, should a lower number come across.
Well, if it does, we can lower prison mitigation further.
Right.
I mean, our goal out of the gate was we wouldn't spend it at all.
Right.
But,
Yep. Just trying to get a gauge for what that looks like.
Yep.
Thank you. Todd, thank you so much. The
no problem.
updates, the way that you put this together in terms of the summary, great for a quick hit view and made perfect sense. Really appreciate it.
It's better this year.
It's going to be better every year.
87 iterations last year was a little tough.
Yes. We're only on number 7 right now.
If you want, we can throw a curveball in there just to
That's
keep
all right,
everybody
I'm
on their toes. No? Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, moving on to our next agenda item. Please discuss the website posting of board correspondence. I don't believe that I have seen anything. Yes, Mike?
You mean the warrant update? Number 12?
I skipped right over
You
number 12,
skipped.
didn't I?
He doesn't want to do it.
Okay, well, that's a choice. That's fine.
Oh, you called us back to it, so now let's do it. Number 12 is to please discuss the warrant for the May 8th annual town meeting. Go right ahead, Blythe, since you're so eager to do it.
I am. So just four things. Article number 7 is the wastewater budget. Per what we talked about tonight with Blair and Barry, we've adjusted the user's cost down by about $6,000. So those numbers are lower than you saw them before. Article 20, this is the animal regulations that the board discussed at the last recent meeting. I've included, I don't usually give it the legal opinion of town council, but I wanted you to see it. He, in doing some research, it came to be very clear that the fine structure that the board preferred would not pass muster with AG's office. They wouldn't allow fines to go that high. So if you look, it's in the warrant on page
12, 11.
12, yep. So he has put in there what the highest fines are that he thinks that they would approve based on his research. And we also felt it was important to both include the non-criminal disposition option and the Chapter 140, 173 option for both nuisance and dangerous dogs, and in the previous section for dogs roaming at large, just so that the town has the most flexibility, depending on the situation, to choose the right path for whatever the situation is, and felt that we shouldn't have only one choice in one section and not in the other. So I wanted to point that out to you, and lots of good reading from Peter about that background.
Because it's significantly less than what we talked about.
It is, I'm sorry. Article 26, this is the road acceptances article. In a previous version, you had seen a blank for an amount for a cost to take a road. As you know, at your next meeting, we're going to be having the hearing about those road acceptances that you have to have before town meeting. we are planning to take Meeting House Road by eminent domain, which is not something we typically do. Typically, it's a friendly
Ooh, that's fun.
accepting a road, right? Yeah.
Just don't see eminent domain as much anymore.
You don't. And so in order to achieve the eminent domain, we have to develop a as-built drawing of the road, which we are working on right now, and that money will come out of monies that the planning board has left in the project. We also need to do an appraisal of the value of the land, and so we had to hire an appraiser to do that work, and he's doing that right now. That's $7,500, and he then in turn will tell us what the value is of that, and there might be some, I'm assured, de minimis cost to pay for the land that we're taking. So we've changed the article so that it just says a sum of money, because we don't know yet. That work will not be done by the time the warrant needs to be signed. So you can leave a warrant more general, and then the motion, as you know, will be more specific. So we will be giving notice to the developer of the road before the 20th that we are planning to take this by eminent domain, and we'll be having a hearing that night on that and the other two streets. So just want to make sure everyone's up to speed on that. And then lastly, I had to put back on Article 30, which was a citizen's petition for some land on Fruit Street. The petitioner said they're not able to get the signatures of the 12 people who signed the original to withdraw it. So it is included exactly how it was received, which is our obligation. I understand that they're not planning to put a motion on the floor at town meeting. So.
Because he's essentially asked that the advisory board recommend to IP, and that it be IP'd immediately on town meeting floor without being presented or discussion, right?
Well, since it's a citizen's petition, they're the ones that bring the motion, not the advisory. So advisory is just going to sit back and the petitioner will not come to the microphone, and I've pointed that out to the moderator.
The issue is he wants to withdraw it, but to do that, he has to get the signatures of the people that signed up to have it put on, and that's what he's not willing to do, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So.
Is it he's not willing, or he just can't?
I'm not sure which is the correct way to describe of the two choices you gave me.
Fair enough. I don't want to push too much and make anybody feel uncomfortable. It is what it is,
Yeah.
right? I just was interested to know if it was people were unwilling to sign again, or if it was just,
I don't think they're unwilling. I don't know that they've been asked,
I got you.
but I can't verify.
No
So
worries.
anyway, I just wanted to tell you about those 4 things. So there may be a couple little nits and gnats here. I need to clean up an explanation for one of the B1 ones from the planning board, but otherwise we're pretty good to go.
When is the planning board having their public hearing?
A week from tonight.
Next Tuesday?
Right.
And by that point, we hope that they will
They will.
finalize their recommendation for everything surrounding the affordable component of this? Yep, okay.
I hope.
So that's next Tuesday.
Yep.
Advisory would then probably bring it up that following Wednesday?
The next night, the 14th.
Okay,
They're hoping to wrap up all their work on the 14th.
more power to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then our next meeting would be on 4/20.
Correct.
Got it.
Anyway, speaking of college again, I may be, because it's also school vacation, April vacation, I may be tripping the life fantastic on a road trip to the in-laws in Virginia.
Nice.
Kids are very pumped. If that's the case, can I be Zoom for a meeting?
Sure.
You can. We haven't gotten to the point where we've tested that yet, just because of having the consistent interaction via this medium. We've
Right.
never really tested. Well, let's evaluate. I mean, if we go full remote, we go full remote for that meeting.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Anita, do you have any questions related to the agenda for Blythe? The agenda,
Nope.
the articles for the warrant?
Articles, nope. It's, the dog hearing, I understand, it's disappointing, but I understand.
I don't understand, to tell you the truth. It says pretty clearly that it goes up to $1,000 for the max on first and second offenses, so I don't know why he would say you wouldn't think they'd
We
go for.
found a recent case law that where the AG had ruled you couldn't have a fine more than $600. And so he said, I don't think if you pass it at 1,000, they're probably going to kick it back at you and say it's not, we're not going to allow it. So
Even though
might
the
as well.
statute says something completely different.
Yeah.
Cool.
Is, with the eminent domain, like, and that, in order to be able to, what is it, 26?
Yep.
Hold on. I'm at 23, I'm at 24. Hold on. 26. So, I understand that in order to accept it, that's why you have to do it. At what point after, is the goal to have it taken, obviously, before town meeting?
No, we have to get town meeting's approval to take it.
Because right now how it reads, so they would be changing that then, right? Because right now how it reads is that the planning board's comments anyway are that this would have the effect of accepting Meeting House. So
Yeah, I probably should change the comment to say accepting Hampton and
Liberty.
Lane and taking Meeting House by
Okay,
eminent
that,
domain.
that cleared it up for me a little bit.
Yep.
Thank you. I mean, I understand that it's an early draft. In the event that we are ultimately able to accept Meeting House, I'm going to think positively. When we are ultimately able to accept Meeting House, what is it at that point that we can put no parking signs? Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I've
Which
even
I
watched
know-
fire trucks try to, when the people are parked on the little roundabout.
Yeah.
I know we had the seminar on roundabouts v. rotaries, but I just am not entirely sure which one it would be. I think roundabout because it's kind of adorable, and rotary seems more substantial. But whatever, like up there, you see, periodically, with enough regularity to be.
Right, and because it's private, it's not enforceable, so.
Correct, right. No, I understand why they weren't up and then they went back down. I certainly understand that. I was here for that, but
Yep.
I just look for, every time I go up there and you have to sort of wait and you watch the action as people sort of jockey around and then you proceed, I think, someday the town's gonna accept this road and then,
That
Anyway.
day is coming.
It's very exciting, Anita, it's very exciting. Eminent domain and being
Nope.
assumed by the town? I mean, it's almost too much to think about.
Well, aside from that general excitement.
No, that's it, that's the only comment that I have on the warrant, and, for now, yep.
So thank you very much, Blythe, for the updates on the
Yep.
warrant. Greatly appreciated. Sounds like things are moving along well. Looking forward to next Tuesday night to kind of tie up that last piece of the B1 stuff and then kind of going down the home stretch there. Our next agenda item this evening is I'm sorry, if there's anybody in attendance tonight who would like to ask a question or a comment related to the warrant for the May 8th annual town meeting, please use the raise hand function at this time. All right, we're seeing no hands at this time, so we'll be moving on to our next agenda item, which is to please discuss website posting of board correspondence. I don't believe we've had anything new come in over the course of the last week. I recently sent over the last two that we had discussed to Ton. I believe that they are up. So we are up to date with anything that we've talked about in this forum. Cece, anything new come across from your perspective?
Nope.
Anita?
We were
No?
just CC'd on the correspondence asking for increased diversity at the police station.
We were.
Very good. So we're moving on to our next agenda item, which is our town administrator updates. Blythe?
A bit of good news on two fronts. We did prevail in court last week on the injunction filed against us for Lake Street, so talking to our council, but planning to finish the rest of those repairs and get that project done and behind us. And then today, we received word that we did receive a grant that we applied for, a Shared Streets grant from the state, $32,000 and some change. This was spearheaded by both COA and Recreation with support from Library to develop a walking trail for seniors that was had some benches along the way and some crosswalks. We had to pare it back at one point because we didn't have the engineering to be ready to submit for a bigger grant. But we were able to prevail on a smaller one, so we're excited about that. So those monies will be coming in soon, and they'll be making plans to install have those items installed. So that's my updates.
Thank you, Blythe. Anita, any questions?
No?
Cece? None from my end either. If anybody has any questions related to Blythe's updates, please use the raise hand function at this time. Not seeing any hands. Thanks, Blythe. Our next item this evening is to approve some warrants. I move that the board approve 3 warrants for the period of March 26th through March 30th, 2021, as printed on the agenda for this meeting.
Second.
Hearing a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. That is unanimous. Thank you. I do not believe we have any minutes for tonight's meeting, Anita. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Beautiful. Then that takes us to the end of our agenda this evening. Blythe, anything else to add tonight? Nope. Good. Todd, anything to add?
No, thank you for all your service.
Thank
A lot
you,
of
sir.
hours, I know.
Cece?
No.
Anything else? Anita? No? All right. Well, I think I'll just note that, like we said before, our next meeting will be on 4/20. We may be full remote, but that won't matter. It'll be still viewable online. And outside of that, I think that's it. So I'll make a motion to adjourn this meeting of the Norfolk Select Board.
Seconded.
Hearing a second. Further discussion? Or no? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.